Story 1. Some memories don't dull, they just go quiet and wait. My name is Eric. I'm 37, a patrol officer in upstate New York. March of 2011 was a wet end to winter. Fields soaked, ditches full, a low fog clinging to the back roads. I was 2 hours into the graveyard shift, half a cup of stale coffee in the thermos and not much to think about, when the first call came through from dispatch. Hang up. Landline, County Road 18. Unit 12, June said. Her voice lived somewhere between tired and careful. We've got a second 911 from a residence near the dead end on County 18. No voice. I hear breathing. Maybe a clock. Eli's giving me 2 different last names for the same address. Can you swing by? A dead end on a dead road. I knew the place. A gray farmhouse that had outlived its paint, with a detached garage losing a fight with gravity. The owner, a Mr. H- had passed the previous year. I clicked the mic. 10-4, en route. The county dark is a special dark, with more space in it than city night. My cruiser's headlights felt small, and the fog turned them into paper cones. As I took the last turn, the gravel sang under the tires, and a skinny chain gate reflected my beams. The padlock was old and slumped, like it had spent the winter thinking about sleep. In the wet mud before it, though, were fresh tire marks that sliced clean and bright through the sheen. Someone had come and gone since the rain. "June," I said. "Be advised. Signs of recent vehicle." "Any return caller?" "Third hang-up," she said, and then, more softly, "It's still connected." I killed the siren, nudged the gate aside, and drove slow up the rutted lane. The house rose out of the brush with its windows black. No porch light, no neighbors within shouting distance. The air smelled like old pennies and damp plaster. Somewhere in the acreage, a distant transformer hummed its monotone. I stepped onto the porch, and the boards gave one tired complaint. My breath ghosted in front of me. Inside the glass, a hall light was trying to be brave, on for a couple heartbeats, then dimming as if it were breathing. The door was stiff, but opened with the kind of sigh I'd expect from something that had been closed for a long time. "Sheriff's office," I called, shining the light into the foyer. Dust had settled in perfect stillness on a console table, the kind that catches mail and empty keys. In that dust were no prints but mine. My beam found a living room with a mantel clock stopped at 1:47, its pendulum rigid, the hands like a pair of needles nailed into the face. I could hear no ticking in that room, but down the hall, there was a sound, not loud, not regular. The kind of tick that hides inside other noises. I told June I was inside, and she told me she still had the line open. "I hear breathing," she said. "It's light. And there's a tick I can't find a rhythm in." I don't believe in haunted houses. I believe in squatters, teenagers, property disputes, copper thieves. The hall light's filament brightened, thinned, brightened again. The corridor was narrow with stale wallpaper that had peeled in curled tongues. At the end of it, a bathroom on the left, a small bedroom on the right. The tick had no location, as if the house body held it in its ribs. The bathroom smelled faintly of old bleach and the strange sharpness that comes when cold water meets iron pipes. Everything wore a skin of dust except the mirror, which was clean. Not just clean. Fogged. I watched my beam cut a slice in it, watched condensation bead at the edge of the light, impossible in a room this cold. I hadn't run a tap, no shower, no steam pot on the stove. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. On the back of the bathroom door, 5 oval clean spaces at shoulder height, left and right, as if hands had been pressed there long enough to move the dust without heat. The fingers pointed toward me, palms outward, no smearing, no slide marks. Something small clicked under my boot. I glanced down at the old black and white tiles. A flake of finish had popped loose, rocking like a tiny metronome. A tick-tick-tick, heel to toe, as if the room needed to invent a clock to justify the sound June was still hearing. On a table in the hall sat a rotary phone, yellowed under its plastic skin. The cord was cut near the jack, and the frayed ends had been wound into a little nest, as tidy as a bird might make before spring. I could see where the cable disappeared into the wall and ended. I picked up the handset, prepared to feel cold bake-light, and it was warm, the kind of warmth that only hands leave behind. My throat did that dry swallow a person does when he wants to sound normal on the radio. "June, there's a rotary here, disconnected, handset's warm." June didn't answer for a second. When she did, it was with a sound like someone staring at a screen and not liking what it said. "I've got the line still open, Eric. And I have 2 records returning for that address, H- name on the deed, and a W- disconnected 18 months ago. The system's flipping between them like it can't make up its mind. I also, hold on." She tilted away and I listened to chair wheels and the low murmur of another operator. "I have a whisper. I think it's a woman. I can't make out the words." I set the handset down again, gently, like I was tucking a child back into bed. The living room's mantel clock stared with its ended time. I pressed my fingers to the glass, half expecting to feel a pulse. Nothing. The knot clock tick wandered down the hall again, to the little bedroom. There, a metal bed frame without a mattress, 4 slats warped and 1 missing. In the corner, a portrait face down against the baseboard. I didn't pick it up. The house had that hush I associate with churches after hours, winter gymnasiums, the inside of old funeral homes. I stood still and listened for movement between my breaths. Far off, a plow dragged itself along a county road, and the sound came through the walls as a low thunder. When it ended, the quiet felt louder than before. "June," I said, "can you try calling back on that landline?" "Eric, it's not a landline anymore," she said. "It's a number that doesn't exist. But every time I send a test ring, I get a bounce that tells me there's a loop, like a recording that never starts." Her voice went smaller. "The caller says, I think she said a name. It sounded like..." She stopped herself. "I still have it. Are you okay?" I wanted to be out of the hall and back in the air that smelled like mud and night. I checked the kitchen before I left. Linoleum curled at the edges, a single plate upside down in a drying rack, a calendar on the wall still showing March, but the wrong year. A pendulum clock hung near the back door. It was a cheaper thing, a gift shop piece with a brass-painted swing. It was also stopped at 1:47. The pendulum had the dust print of fingers on it, as if someone had reached in and pinched it still. When I stepped back through the foyer, that brave hall light fluttered hard and then held. The air felt extracted, like the house had taken a breath and didn't want to give it back. I went out onto the porch and the night met me like a friend I hadn't realized I missed. The fog had thinned. Somewhere past the hedgerow, a killdeer cried once and then remembered the hour and shut up. I told June I was clearing the structure and securing the door. The chain gate would do. The tire tracks were still bright. No footprints on the porch, but mine. I turned to the cruiser and touched the metal hood, which had collected a skin of dew. It was the first thing that felt convincingly real. "Unit 12, June said in my ear, and her voice had a small tremor now. "Before you go, the caller says your name, Officer Eric." The radio didn't go silent. It went into a texture, static that wasn't quite static, like snow listening to itself fall. The display glowed as normal. The night sounded normal. But for a handful of seconds, I stood with the mic halfway to my mouth, and there was nothing in my head but my own name in a voice I hadn't heard yet. I keyed up and said something ordinary. My notes later said, "Scene secure, no contact," but I don't remember writing that. I remember closing the front door slow, as if to keep from waking someone. I remember the way the padlock felt in my hand when I slid it back through the chain, as if metal could be tired. I remember driving away and glancing in the rear view too many times. The records later confirmed what June had feared to say. The number that dialed us had been canceled 18 months earlier. The property records played ping pong with two names, one dead, one moved out of state. The tape of our radio transmissions had a thin whistle underneath my voice, right where I said the time. No one else heard it until I asked them to listen for it. Then they flinched. I don't believe in haunted houses. I believe in habits so strong they bend the space around them. A person listens for a clock long enough, the room decides it should comply. Sometimes I hear my name in traffic noise. It's ordinary, it's nothing. Still, since that night, silence bothers me more than any scream. Story 2. If I hadn't been there, I'd doubt it too. I'm Vanessa, 31 then, highway patrol in northern Arizona. Our desert at 2 a.m. isn't empty so much as it's paused. The warm wind makes a low ribbon out of the shrubs, and the sky throws all its stars at you at once. That August, 2016, was the kind that keeps its heat even after midnight, and my uniform held the day in it. Mile marker 191, dispatch said. Hazards on for almost an hour, same vehicle. Multiple passers-by. No driver seen. I took the I-17 southbound stretch that always makes me think of a photograph. Long shot, 2 lanes, reflective eyes in the asphalt. The shoulder there is a narrow mercy between traffic and scrub. When I found the car, a beige sedan with one cracked taillight cover, the hazards were performing their patient semaphore. The flash painted the highway sign in pulses. 191, 191, 191. The world was the clicking sound of turn signals and the low breath of wind. I parked behind at an angle, lights slow, engine idling low. The temperature outside said it wanted to be 90 but didn't have the energy. When I opened the driver's door of the sedan, a cold draft hit me like I'd opened a freezer. The air conditioning was off. The key wasn't in the ignition. The cloth seats had that stale factory sweet that older cars keep, but they were cool, the kind of cool that takes time. Dispatch Unit 37, I said. Vehicle is cold inside, hazards on, no occupants. I'm at mile marker 191, southbound shoulder, copy 37. Plate returns to a Phoenix address, no wants. Complainant says they last saw it an hour ago. Advise, the dash clock read 2:08. I'm not superstitious about times. The human brain loves an omen. Still, I noticed. The radio in the car was on, volume low. It wasn't on a station so much as it was on the space between, where voices can sound like water. If you've ever stood in a diner right before it opens, there's a murmur, silverware settling, a cook humming one line of a song. The noise inside the sedan had that feel. In the back seat, a child's car seat with the harness cut clean through. No jagged edges, no fraying. On the passenger visor, a note held by a bent paper clip, the ink line broken where the pen had hesitated. Back before 2. The 2 had been retraced twice, darker than the rest. A ring of something, water, coffee, had bled into the paper. Metal cooling clicks make sense. An engine goes from hot to not, it talks about it for a while. But the engine wasn't warm. The car had a different ping, down near the floor, like one small bead rolling inside hollow metal and choosing where to stop. When I moved my weight, the sound moved with me, not away from me. I shifted to look for it, and it left my left foot and landed near my right ankle. There's a particular phone ring that cuts through the dead stretch of night. Not loud, just important. I heard it and thought of glove compartments and the crunch of lost things under seats. I followed the ring to the trunk. It rang again. I could picture, absurdly, a phone tucked next to a jack and a half-empty quart of oil humming its little song. "Dispatch, I'm going to open the trunk," I said. And even as I said it, I realized I hadn't asked for a second unit. The highway was empty, a black river. No sign of driver. "Copy 37, ping shows the registered phone near your location. It's active. Caller ID reads unknown when it hits the tower. Do you see the phone?" "I hear it," I said. "Not yet. The key wasn't on the driver, so there was no key. I used the internal lever by the driver's seat." The trunk clicked. I walked back, the hazard rhythm lighting the car, the road, my hands. The road again. When I lifted the trunk, the air that rose to meet me was warm, like someone had just folded laundry. Inside, a gray moving blanket with the cheap satin trim, smudges of dust, and the deep, tired smell of old gasoline. No spare, no jack. The trunk light was a tooth of yellow. The phone rang once more, closer now. I don't know why I expected to see it. You learn to keep your face blank around strangers and objects. It was not on top of anything. It was not under the blanket. The sound was in my ear, and then it was in my hand, because my own phone lit up with unknown on the screen. I answered, because that's what you do. "Highway patrol," I said. "Go ahead." Sometimes the voice you hear at night is your own, and you do not recognize it until it tells you to stop. I heard my voice, my cadence, the slight flatness I have when I know someone's about to do something irreversible. Say, "Don't open it yet." The line clicked. Not a drop, not the soft, endless beep of a call end, but a click like an old receiver put onto a cradle with intent. I stared into the trunk like it wanted to change into something else. My hands did the automatic things. Set the phone down, breathe in, breathe out. Feel the tiny sting of sweat trying to form at the base of my neck and failing, because the air against my skin felt 15 degrees cooler than it should have. The ping under the car floor migrated to somewhere I couldn't point to anymore. I closed the trunk. "Dispatch," I said, and my voice sounded like a copy of itself. "We have a phone call from unknown to my unit. I have a note in the car that says back before 2. Time on the vehicle's clock reads 2:08. 2:08, dispatch repeated, because repeating a thing pins it to the board. "I'm initiating a tow." "Do you require assistance?" I wanted to say yes, not because I needed hands, but because I needed a witness to what I wasn't sure I'd seen. "Negative," I said. "Send the wrecker. I'll wave them in." The sky leaned a little closer then. It does that before dawn, even when dawn is still hours away. A semi came through in the far lane, long white noise, a comet of red lights. The hazards kept up their patient speech. The car radio had softened to a hush, a fragment of women's voices like they were waiting for the coffee maker to finish. The dash clock still read 2:08. I did the things the manual says. I walked the brush line with my light and checked for anyone who'd gone off angry or hurt. I watched the spider webs catch starlight and shake at nothing. I took photographs, plate, interior, note, car seat with its 2 cleanly severed straps, trunk interior with nothing that made a story. I wore the tape recorder of my mind out, trying to match each detail to a normal reason. The tow arrived, a guy with a baseball cap and a patient dog in the passenger seat. He took one look at me and didn't say the joke he had ready. We lifted the sedan, and the weight made a new sound in the suspension, a creak that was satisfied to have finally been asked. I signed the form and watched them go. When their taillights were a mile down, the night came back like a lid closing. On the ride to the yard, I synced the times in my head. The first call at 2:01, first passerby. The second at 2:28. My arrival marked 2:42 on my dash cam and 2:34 on the dispatch log. A small gap like a misthreaded needle. Later, after the report, after the tow guy said we made good time, after the sun climbed up and bleached the world into a washer-white quiet, someone in records pointed out a 12-minute problem. The radio log skipped. No one used the word missing. They said, "Offset, I don't believe in curses. I believe in choices that echo." When I got home at 8 that morning, my kitchen clock read 2:08 because I'd left it stopped that way the day I moved in and never bothered to set it. I laughed when I saw it. Then I took the batteries out and put them in a drawer because it felt like I was being dared. We never found the owner in my shift. A week later, someone said she'd been fine, that a domestic argument had gone sideways and she'd left the car to walk it off with a friend. Good news, relief isn't always reliable. I file the story where I file the others that visit again at 3 a.m., between the exact weight of a hand on a bathroom door and the way a warm blanket breathes when there's no one under it. I tell myself I made the right call, that postponing can be compassion, that evidence can come in order later. But when I drive that stretch now, my eyes catch the green sign whether I want them to or not. The number blinks in the corner of my mind. The highway is patient. It doesn't forget. I tell myself I made the right call, but the highway still waits at 2:08. Story 3. Some sounds don't travel through the air so much as they drill up through your shoes. I'm Luis, 42 then, a patrol sergeant in Dayton, Ohio. October of 2019, close enough to Halloween that the city's masks were out, but the cold hadn't committed yet. I'd had 3 hours of quiet with the hum of the Dash's company when the call came in just after 3:20 a.m. Disturbance at a self-storage on the edge of town. Report of a rhythmic noise in the A block, lights flickering. Manager on site and jumpy. The manager, a man who had the permanent half-alert posture of someone who naps in an office chair, met me by the chain-link gate with a key ring big enough to anchor a boat. "It's in A hallway," he said. "Been doing it off and on since midnight, like a metronome. No one's supposed to be here." We walked the long concrete corridor, and the fluorescents made that sound they make when they think they're dying. Little high notes, as if moths were chewing on electricity. The air carried two smells: lemon cleaner in denial about the dirt, and the unnameable odor of cardboard that's been damp once. As we moved, the sound reached us. Tick, tick, tick. Thin and exact. Not a drip, not a clock I could see. My shoulders decided to be tense without asking me. "A 143, the manager said, consulting a clipboard. "It seems loudest there." The units here had roll-up doors with disc locks. A 143's lock was intact, dust around it undisturbed. The metal of the door looked like it had been cleaned in a square, a little larger than a hand, in a different rhythm than the rest, like someone bored had polished only that spot. I leaned in. The tick kept time and then got ahead of itself, speeding by one notch like a runner pushing off the wall of a pool. "Dispatch," I said. "I'm at the storage facility on Garber." Audible disturbance near Unit A 143, no sign of forced entry. "We'll need the lessee info. Copy, Sarge." Dispatch came back. "Contact on file is a P.O. box. Phone is not in service. We'll try the alternate." The manager had the master. He hesitated. "Policy says we only open for law enforcement," he said, which was funny. I was in uniform. His hands might have been shaking, or mine were, because the key rattled in the lock like we were acting nervous. The door came up slow, like it had waited for this and wanted to savor it. Inside, the expected geometry of other people's lives reduced. Boxes stack labeled with black marker, XMAS 03, kitchen, MISC, frames, a chipped wardrobe, a TV from before flat screens. The smell of old paper swelled up. My light sent long angles into the corners, and the dust caught it like confetti. The noise did not come from a thing. It came from above, from the concrete ceiling, from everywhere. Tick, tick, tick. So clean it erased other sounds while it lasted, and left the room emptier each time it paused. On a low table by the wardrobe, a typewriter waited with its carriage centered like a held breath. Black metal body, keys with white circles of letters, the ribbon dark enough to stain. It looked off the rack if the rack had been in 1972. I've had a typewriter before. You know when one has oil in it and when one is a prop. This one was alive enough to want to be touched. "Who keeps a typewriter in storage?" the manager muttered. His whisper came out too loud. It made me aware that we'd been keeping our voices soft, as if there were a sleeper we didn't want to wake. "People keep everything," I said. "Folks break up, someone dies, no one wants to decide." I was talking to slow my own hands. I used my knuckle to nudge the carriage. It slid with oiled obedience, dinged politely at the end. The tick in the ceiling synced with it for 2 beats and then resumed its independence. The wardrobe door gave the menacing creak wardrobes always audition with, 1 foot dramatic, then mundane. Inside, empty hangers, a shoebox with orange sale sticker residue, a rolled blanket like a tongue. I touched the hanger rod. Dust took my fingerprint and kept it as a faint circle. On the inside wall, near the top in pencil, a 143 written small, underlined twice, then erased so hard you could still see it. My radio chirped. "Sarge, we just got a 911 from a female whispering, 'Stop the noise.' Ani Eli puts her at your facility, but the number's from a different county and shows as disconnected. We can't call back." "Copy," I said, glancing at the manager. He had what I think of as close-lipped fear, lips pressed flat like a kid who knows not to say a name. In some storage places there is an atmosphere, unseen pressure from the lives boxed up. I felt it behind my ribs. Then the typewriter made a small sound, not the show-off clack you'd expect, but the very quiet touch of one key moving. The ribbon ribboned minutely. Nothing struck the page. "Sir," I said to the manager, "I'm going to document and then we'll secure it." He nodded like he'd accept any plan that had end in it. I scribbled time and unit number, took photos on the work phone. The tick became the whole clock. I put my hand flat on the table to ground myself. The typewriter did its next trick. The carriage lever lifted by the width of a breath and fell back. The space bar depressed, as if remembering itself. When someone tells you the machine typed by itself, they're usually getting to the part where they ran. I didn't run. I stepped back far enough that if something exploded, I'd keep my eyes. The letters chose then to arrive. Clack, clack, clack. Not rapid, almost embarrassed. A 143. We watched it, as if watching made it normal. The dash came easy. The numbers took pressure. The sound went down my spine with each impression. At the end, the carriage dinged its little cheerful ding. The tick in the ceiling stopped and started late, like it had missed a bus. "What's your master code for the cam system?" I asked, because cops ask technical questions when metaphysics shows up. He said it, grateful. We walked to the office together, but the camera view was exactly what cameras give. Angles where nothing happens. The hallway feed showed our backs going in. Rewind, same. Fast forward, same. The seconds piled up and nothing changed. When we went back, the typewriter sat like it had not moved, but the paper had 3 new faint ghost letters above the line we'd watched. ALUIS, barely transferred, as if the keys had brushed the ribbon lightly while someone thought about my name and decided against it halfway through. I felt the private embarrassment that comes when a stranger gets too close without meaning to. "We'll take it," I said, "for safekeeping. Evidence if needed." The words were for the report's future. I unplugged the machine even though it had no plug. Habit. We bagged what we could bag. The typewriter had weight, the old honest kind, and the carry made my arms aware of themselves. The manager signed a temporary release form with the ballpoint you have to coax into writing. As we wheeled the typewriter past the A block, the tick resumed behind us like a person who starts whispering again once you've left the room. Property logged it in before dawn. The tech lifted the ribbon, pronounced it fresh. No latent prints developed, which happens more often than people think. Skin is unreliable and dust steals histories. Under missed marks on the intake, I wrote, "Very faint impressions, ALUIS," above a 143 stamped line. I showed the intake clerk. "Like you were thinking of me," I said, making a joke I didn't want to be a joke. He didn't smile. When I returned to the storage lot at 4:10 to resecure, the manager had locked the door down. "It's paid up 10 years now," he said without looking at me. "What is?" "A 143, he said. "The tenant came by after you left." His mouth did something like a smile, but with the parts of the smile missing. "Left cash to cover long term. Said don't open it again, said it's taken care of." "Who?" I said. He shrugged in a way that tried to be ordinary and landed on evasive. "New guy I hadn't seen before," he said. "Quiet. Had a receipt from ages ago. Paper yellowed." He rubbed his forearm like he was cold. The fluorescence above us dimmed and brightened, the way old lights tremble when morning thinks about happening. We can work the logic hard, but it bends elsewhere when it wants. We attempted to contact the listed owner through the P.O. box. It bounced. Dispatch never located the caller with the whisper. The report reads like a thing that didn't quite occur. Noise complaint, no suspect, property checked, unusual circumstance noted. On the night since, the tick has proofed itself against obvious places. That's the worst part. I'll be in my kitchen, nothing on, and the fridge motor will cut off, leaving the room flat. In the flatness, a meticulous, almost polite tick begins. Not loud enough to justify annoyance, not soft enough to ignore. I have learned not to get a chair and press my ear to the ceiling because hearing it closer makes it personal. I have also learned that my name fits inside the letters of my job so neatly it can hide there. LUIS inside. Sergeant Lewis, inside a 143, inside a typed hyphen that felt like a held breath. I never unlocked a 143 again, but the tick found its way into quiet rooms. Story 4. There are buildings that act like they remember arguments. I'm Dana, 35 at the time, a city cop in Tacoma, Washington. January 2014, the kind of winter from the sound that sneaks up your sleeves and stays. At 4:12 a.m., with the steam radiators in half the city hissing like cats, we got a call. Domestic disturbance. Apartment 3B of a pre-war walk-up near the commercial strip. Neighbors reported furniture dragging. 2 voices, one low, one strained, and a thud. I had a partner on another call. I went alone. 4 stories, narrow wooden stairs that announced every footstep with a serial number of creaks. The hall smelled like old paint and frying from someone who kept odd hours. The door to 3B had been painted a hopeful blue once, now dulled to the color of sky the hour before rain. From inside, silence. But under the door, light that moved as if someone crossed back and forth. A tremor that couldn't make up its mind whether to be presence or radiator flicker. Dispatch, Unit 12 at 3B, knocking. My knuckles met wood that had swollen and unswollen 100 winters and kept those conversations. Neighbors peered from cracks, faces at chain-on doors. "They've been at it an hour," a woman in a robe whispered, as if the people in 3B might be courteous enough not to hear gossip about themselves. "It stopped when you came up." I pressed my ear to the door. In the pause before you think you hear something, your breathing is suddenly loud. Behind my breath, there was the kind of quiet that implies someone is listening back. Then my portable crackled and dispatch cut in. "Unit 12, the 911 is still open. We've had the line for 9 minutes. We are hearing a loop of voices, male and female, arguing the same line over and over. Don't touch me, then don't walk away." It repeats. "The caller ID belongs to 3B. Our file says 3B has been vacant since August. I tried the handle expecting resistance. The door sighed inward like the apartment was tired of keeping itself together. Cold air rolled out, surprising because the building heat was doing its best everywhere else. The living room to the left had furniture under sheets, ghost shapes with the immodest lumps of people removed. The floorboards showed arcs of scrape marks, a circle pattern like someone had dragged a couch around to face every wall in turn, then abandoned the geometry one short step from completion. "Maintenance in the building?" I asked the super's name from dispatch. "Any contractors?" "Super says 3B is empty. Last tenant left after a gas leak that didn't leak, just clanked the pipes. He filed for a permit to fix the ceiling and never finished." A pause. Audio on the open line is escalating. The names are muffled. The loop keeps jumping back. The kitchen had a half-rolled shade that made the window look as if it were squinting. The counters wore a film of the special dust that only accumulates on things that no one is sentimental about. My light brushed the refrigerator door and left a clean smear. The stove rested with its pilot out. I closed it carefully and continued to the small hallway where the apartments in buildings like this store their extra darkness. On a moving box, the size of a nightstand, sat 2 smartphones from a prior era, thick, both with spiderweb cracks. Both screens were dark, the kind of deep dead that no charger fixes. And yet the glass behaved like water. In them, I could see a thin portrait of the room, a me that stood at a slightly wrong angle. When I moved my hand, the tiny wrong me lagged and then caught up as if embarrassed. My radio made a sound I'd never been glad to hear before, my own name in someone else's mouth. "Dana," dispatch said, then stopped. There was a second voice layered under hers, not reading from a script, not on the air. She let it through for a heartbeat and then cut it. "We're picking up the argument voices on your frequency," she said. "It's brief. They said your name once. I don't spook easy, but names have weight. They fit our ears like keys." "I'm alone in 3B, I said. "No persons. Evidence of furniture movement. Phones here appear non-functional. I don't know why I didn't say dead. The radiation of that word would have been too on the nose. A string under the living room sheet snagged my boot and tugged the cover down just enough to reveal the couch, a bland apartment issue thing. The cushions had shallow hollows, like knees had kneaded them in the same place for months. On the floor in front of it, a small stain of something clear that had dried glassy, catching my beam. Not blood, not water. Looked like the residue left when tape stays behind. Shape of a circle, as if something had been affixed there and pulled up slow. Above me, the ceiling wore its own map, a lighter ring in the plaster, faint, the size of a hula hoop. If you'd never done ceiling work, you might miss it. I've had apartments that taught me to notice. Whatever had been up there had been heavy enough to crush dust into a bright halo and then removed, leaving a whisper where it had pressed. The bathroom had a mirror that was not wise enough yet to have spots. My face looked back with a pale version of how I felt, breath ghosting my mouth. The tub's porcelain wore a single long hair in the shape of a question mark. I did what any officer does, cleared every closet and underspace because the living deserve that diligence, even when the building suggests it would rather be left alone. My radio again. The looped voices, this time clear as if they'd come up the stairwell and entered behind me. A male. "Don't touch me." Female. "Then don't walk away." Over and over that misfit call and response, like a performance of 2 people for an audience of none. Then it veered, and it shouldn't have. "Dana," the male voice, almost weary. "Don't separate us again." Dispatch swore softly, second mic open for a breath, then came back. "We heard that," she said, in case my expression had failed to register disbelief. "The caller line shows activity and then resets. We still show 3B as origin." The door to the bedroom fought me half an inch and then yielded. Inside, a mattress leaning against a wall. 2 dingy boxes of the sort that hold winter clothes you didn't like in summer either. On the floor under the window, the shadow outline of where a dresser had lived. On the sill, 2 rubber bands so dry they had more memory than elastic. The air had no smell of people. My light hit the corner of the ceiling and caught something that made my shoulders knot. A clean circle of plaster dust, as if something had hung there, pivoted, then left a testimonial in negative. It lined up perfectly with the ring on the floor. I tried and failed to come up with a domestic hazard that would leave both marks with no hardware remaining. "Dispatch," I said. "Check with the super about any fixtures removed in here. Tell him there are marks." It felt ridiculous to avoid saying circle. We sound less certain when we say shapes. "Copy," she said, and then, after a beat, "He says there was a ceiling hook for a plant. He removed it months ago." I looked at the size of the ring, the color shift, the radius. I pictured a plant that was either a science project or a child. I pictured 2 people circling each other like moons. The 2 phones on the moving box were still dead. I picked one up to confirm the offness. It weighed as much as it should. Its back had been pried up and the battery removed. The other was gutted the same way. I tilted the dead screen, and the reflection of the room changed again. My radio on my shoulder blinked in the glass, though its light was not currently blinking. The speed mismatch in that tiny image was a problem I could put nowhere in the report. Standing in the doorway is a way to make both directions options. I stood there longer than I meant to. Maybe the voices wanted that. Maybe the building did. The radiator in the hall clanged in the specific way of pipes remembering their youth. In that last clatter, the loop cut. The silence that replaced it was not blank. It came with pressure, like a palm on the mouth. Protocol has gravity. I posted the door with a strip of tape and a courtesy, "Police do not enter," even though anyone could smile and walk past a strip of tape. I knocked on the neighbors' doors again and took statements with my pen, writing facts that refused to attach to each other. Heard dragging, yes. Heard argument, yes. Saw anyone, no. The woman in the robe pressed her lips and looked at the number stenciled on the 3B door like a person who wanted to ask it to be again what it had been last week. In daylight, the report felt like fiction I was crowd editing. The super filed his own note. There had been a remodeling delay. He wouldn't say why. I think he genuinely didn't know, or pretended to not know because knowing gets in the way of work. When I swung by 2 days later on the way to a different call, the building had done the thing buildings do when they want time to rewrite. The apartment door was open, and the unit was full of contractors' tarps, sawdust floating like a weather system. Fresh paint hid the circles on ceiling and floor. The number 3B had been re-stenciled in a cleaner font that didn't match the others. I asked about the looped call. "We get pranks," the super said, cheerful without proof. "There are sounds cities make that I can live inside all day. There are also the shapes silence puts in the air when it thinks no one's watching. The rhythm of 2 people making and unmaking a choice is one of those shapes." On a night not long after, with my patrol car parked by the waterfront and the glow of the port cranes like a second skyline, my radio offered me a fragile gift, 1/2 second of breath that wasn't mine, and then nothing. If you pressed me, I'd say it sounded relieved. I didn't write that anywhere. We got one more call logged from 3B 3 weeks later. Same time of night, same anonymous loop. I went again. The apartment was occupied now by a man with a guitar and enough blankets to look like he'd done a winter in Minnesota. His floor plan was different. He'd shoved the couch against the wall where the arc used to fail. His ceiling was uniform paint with no circle at all. I stood there looking up, feeling ridiculous, and asked about the radiator noise. He said he liked it. Said it sounded like the building breathing in and out, like a promise it would remember him too. We call things unfounded when they leave us no paperwork to hold, but the city collects the rest. The looped voices that want to win the same fight every night. The names that push themselves through radios to make sure you keep them. I haven't heard them again because my frequencies have been filled with other people. That's what I tell myself. It's functional. But quiet apartments at 4 a.m. have their own programming. If I stand in a hallway long enough, I start to hear any name that fits. I haven't heard them again, but that doesn't mean they stopped.